Good afternoon to all our listeners and viewers of the NDC Heartbeat podcast. We're happy to have all of you who are on WeFM, Vibes FM, Spice Capital Radio, and now Talk Grenada. You can find Talk Grenada on 90.1. We also wish to welcome all those who are on the NDC Facebook page, and we ask you to share the program, please. Well, for today's program, I held a few interviews yesterday, one with the General Secretary of the party, where we spoke about party institutional building capacity, but specifically about upcoming constitutional review meetings. Then I spoke with the Honorable Ron Redhead. He's the Minister responsible for youth, sports, and culture. Spoke about Windward Island school games taking place in Grenada this weekend. We touched a bit on Spice Mass and a Grenadian young cricket team in the UK. I also held an interview with the Honourable David Andrew. He's the Minister responsible for education. And I was asking him for updates on what's happening in his ministry. In particular, the Uniform Assistance Program, otherwise known as the Voucher Program. We spoke about TAMCC, UWI assistance, free school tuition, starting from this September, and other matters relative to education. Then we'll end the program with a rebroadcast of the Prime Minister's recent press conference held this week on the subject matter of crime and violence. So stay tuned. Coming up shortly is the interview, first of all, with the General Secretary of the NDC, Mr. Larry Barry. Good afternoon, Gensec. It's good of you to pop by to be on the Heartbeat today. I know you have a lot to share with our supporters all over Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. Give us a snippet as to what are some of the activities upcoming.
Most importantly, thanks once more, Terry. Special thanks to all of the members of the party and all of Grenada for supporting us in our week of 1 year anniversary week of activities. We're delighted with this enormous success of all of our activities. So again, special thanks to all our party members, supporters, all of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. We're really delighted, and we say special thanks for being part of a successful first year. And we have had a passing grade across the board from persons from all walks of life, political persuasions and otherwise, has given our government a passing grade.
Absolutely.
Year one. Terry, I just want to speak quickly on forthcoming party building, party institutional development activity. Coming out of the 35th annual convention, our theme was Transforming NDC, Transforming Grenada. One of the most transformative aspects of any institution are its rules, and undergirding institutional rules are often found in a constitution. Mm-hmm. The National Democratic Congress is undertaking, we are currently undertaking constitutional review, reform with some proposed amendments. Our constitutional review began a decade ago. We did work in earnest from 2017. We have continued that work up to March 2021. And the fruits of all that work is coming to bear upon a consultative process with the broad party leadership. The broad party leadership comprised all our constituency executives and PD leaders, polling division leaders. And following these consultations with the broad party leadership, we moved to the broad party membership for consultations and constitution amendment, which will come up in September. So at the convention, where our theme was Transforming NDC, Transforming Grenada, a resolution was passed that we'll have a special convention on the party's amendment and the adoption of those amendments. Mm-hmm. Our Constitution Review Committee, coming out of that resolution passed at the convention, is led by the Honorable Prime Minister and political leader.
Right.
It comprises General Secretary, Attorney General, floor member and former party chair, and Sister Denise Roberts, out of the New York chapter, but representing the broader diaspora. That grouping, we meet every Tuesday, and we have had extensive review of the extensive reviews that have been done by the party for the period I've mentioned
So that's
earlier.
a continuing review of the party's constitution.
Yes, but we have some specific proposals
Amendments,
now.
yeah.
And those specific proposed amendments are going to be fascinating for the development of party and country.
Right.
That's the
Okay.
difference.
When are these activities going to be held?
Our first round of consultations with the broad party leadership, or all our constituency executives and the women's arm, youth arm executive, and the diaspora executives, London, UK, Florida, New York, Canada, and our recent interim executive in some new diaspora chapters that we establishing out in Georgia and also in New Jersey.
Right.
Those consultations commence on Wednesday, 26 July. Wednesday, 26 July. We kick it off with the West Zone. So our Western Zone, we have consultations at the St. Patrick's RC, 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday, July 26. Then we move on the 27th to the Southern Zone, the 5 constituencies in St. George's. That will be at the GBSS, 6 p.m. Then we do some other party business on Friday the 28th. Then we return with the consultations on Saturday 29th July. We have a back-to-back consultation on Saturday 29th July. At 2:30 p.m., we do the diaspora block via Zoom. So all the diaspora chapters I mentioned, 2:30 p.m. Saturday,
All right.
July 29th.
For the benefit of supporters who need to be there, just repeat who are the members.
Okay, so for this round of
Should be
consultations,
at this consultation.
Yes, for this round of consultations, the broad party leadership. The broad party leadership comprise the elected executives and interim executives of all constituency branches. That's 15 constituency branches. And the polling division leaders, the polling division captains, polling division chairpersons. Those comprise the broad party membership, including the executive of the National Women's Arm, executive of the National Youth Arm, and the executive of our diaspora chapters, UK, Canada, New York, Florida, New Jersey, and Georgia. And of course, that grouping, we would have the consultations on the 29th, 2:30 p.m. via Zoom. And then at 6 p.m., we have the final consultations with St. David's branch, executive and PD captains, as well as the National Youth Arm executive and the National Women's Arm executive. We will then come back sometime after Carnival to have the consultations with the Big Four, the St. Andrews Big Four. For the executive of the St. Andrews Big Four, the executive of the 4 constituencies in St. Andrew,
Right.
and the PD leaders, PD captains of all 4 constituencies. Their consultation will be the final round of consultations on constitution amendment for the broad party leadership. So St. Andrews Big Four will take them after Carnival.
No, they were originally scheduled for the 28th.
Yes. But,
all right, so just speak to that so folks out there are clear.
Yes, so all of the executive members, you have a table that we circulated on consultations on party constitution amendment. That date was scheduled for Friday, 28th July. So that was the date for the St. Andrews Big Four consultations. We have rescheduled to after Carnival. Largely to support St. Andrews Northwest with a major funeral that we are paying respects and homage to our brother dearly departed, and other members of the St. Andrews Big Four constituencies wanted to also show respect. So out of that, we decided we have to pay homage to the people who have carried the torch
Indeed.
for this party, and therefore we put off the constitutional review in respect and deference,
Right.
to that support for the family and so on. So it's a big funeral, and we also wanted to pay respects to the families and the constituency for the brothers' work in the constituency. In addition to which, we had an important retreat. I'm going to speak to the retreat. I have to return to the desk of the
Yes, indeed.
General Secretary.
We have to deal with that separately.
Yes, we have to return, and I'll speak a bit. But coming out of such a critical retreat of our leadership, we have some emerging opportunities that we're going to seize by having one of those emerging opportunities looked at on Friday the 20th as well. So we don't stop work, we just diversify the work.
Yep,
but we don't
indeed.
stop work, yes.
Absolutely.
And then of course we go off to the soca semis thereafter.
Well, absolutely.
We're gonna miss our first couple of artists, but we are
we
always, yes, we're always going to be engaged. Always going to be engaged.
Let me, on behalf, of course, of the party, extend condolence to the family of the brother in St. Andrews.
Yes.
And all those whom have passed on recently.
Yes, including Sister
party.
Madonna and her family and many others who we want to say gone but not forgotten, and we pay homage and tribute to your service to country, to family, to community.
Absolutely so indeed. Any closing remarks?
That we are happy for the support. We stand on the shoulders of those who have built this institution back on the 17th of October 1987 when this party was born. We are today happy for the opportunity to continue to serve this country now in the capacity as the administration, and we are happy for the vote of confidence that have been shown and for the passing grade for a solid year one performance, big achievements taken directly out of our manifesto, and we're really proud that we can put the ticks against our manifesto commitments met.
What are the expectations for year two?
Fantastic.
I know that's probably another conversation, but
Yes.
just give me a little snippet.
And I think
little snippet.
I want the Prime Minister to have the benefit of his engagements with the public on some of what our year two. I mean, coming out of the retreat, for example. Remember, Grenadians, we have taken a prioritized sectoral review in a special retreat last year, October.
Mm-hmm.
And we are pulling out some specific critical projects that are necessary for the development and advancement of this country, which we came out of this retreat as we speak this weekend, weekend of July 21, 22. And therefore, year two is going to see a consolidation of the development trajectory of this country. Consolidation.
Absolutely.
We are going to see our manifesto commitments bearing fruit. And if you go to our manifesto commitments, it includes a new national teaching hospital. The Prime Minister will speak to that. We've done some great work around that coming out of this retreat. Of course, we have in our manifesto 500 Grenadian-style homes. In fact, we are going to be having special technical engagement on that commitment as we begin to roll out that commitment for year two. And that's why we're coming back on Friday the 28th of July to begin a technical review of that commitment going forward, while the party is going to be broadening its recruitment of members, its building out of its outreaches, its standardization of its structures and systems, so that party building from the ground up, PDs, all the way up to the National Executive Council, and institution building by undergirding those developments through our party constitution is going to be part of our year two commitments, and we look forward to how that will propel us into a better Grenada, because we say at our 35th annual convention, transforming NDC, transforming Grenada, we're doing both, and we had at work with it. Year two is going to be exciting for the development of the party and country.
I am particularly excited about the decision to start implementing the decisions with respect to the constituency manifestos.
Yes. Oh, and that came out of the retreat.
That is exciting.
Yes. So we're going to pull out all these constituency manifestos. There's some specific constituencies where the constituency manifesto is going to be given special attention, and we're breaking out how we bill out. We reviewing and do a breakdown of how we bill out prioritization for these constituency manifestos.
Well, This has been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure as usual.
Thank you very much,
And Terry,
General Secretary.
congratulations to you, Ambassador deserved. Ambassador deserved.
Well,
Congratulations.
the work has only now begun.
Congratulations on being our diaspora ambassador.
Thank you. Here now is the interview held with the Honorable Ron Redhead, Minister responsible for youth, sports and culture. Good afternoon, Minister Ron Redhead. There's a lot happening in Grenada this weekend, and good of you to stop by on Heartbeat to share with us some of the things that are happening. I even hear you have a team in England, and a lot seems to be happening in sports this weekend in Grenada. Share with us.
Yes, a lot is happening. So, for example, we have in Grenada the host of the Windward Island School Games, Secondary School Games 2023, sponsored by Winlot, of course. It is going well. The countries that are representing involves Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada. The Windward Island Games is a historical games and has been around a long time, and is funded by Winlot. So the secondary school students, we just had the opening ceremony on Saturday. It went well. Everyone is excited, and we're all pumped to make sure that this is going to be a successful event. And of course, Terry, we're also dealing with Spice Mass to ensure that we have the evolution of Spice Mass. So we have a number of prelims just concluded, getting ready for the semifinals, and to be in a position to be able to showcase our talents, our artists, and the various people, producers, you name it. So a lot of activity is happening in Grenada at this present time, and in short order we will make some pronouncements officially as things that are happening. So for example, on Saturday, the Looney Spark and Electrify, the brothers, they are going to host the Kids Soca Monarch. One of the things we have done this year and will do in future is partner with them to help build the developmental aspect of training in soca, to ensure that the future soca artists, the quality of music that they are producing are of a high standard and high quality. So we're going to work with them more in depth. This year we gave sponsorship as a government, but we're going to work with them in depth to incorporate it as part of our developmental program in terms of training the future of soca artists. So we're doing a number of things, and we are just happy that it's currently ongoing. PAN is currently happening in Carriacou, being taught PAN. Young people are being taught PAN in Carriacou. And Terry, it's going wonderful. We do have one of the workshops is held on Saturday. It was postponed last Saturday due to the torrential rains from the tropical wave, but it's ongoing today in terms of job preparedness, learn how to write CVs, get the opportunity to look at different stakeholders or groups, target where you would like to have a job, that sort of thing. And it's going wonderful, as I said.
Well, that's fantastic. Good to hear. Have you been part of the opening ceremony today? Because I know you have a very hectic schedule yourself.
Yes, I was. So the opening ceremony went well. We saw some spectacle of cultural displays. We also had some speeches from various representatives, including that of our own, the Permanent Secretary for the Department of Education, and also myself as Minister, and other officials. So I was at the ceremony, coming from the ceremony, come back to my event here, and it's just going, as I said, on and on and on, wonderfully so.
Well, that's great. Good to hear. Tell us quickly, is there a cricket team representing Grenada in the UK this weekend?
Yes, so the Grenada Cricket Association was able to commence. It's always doing this, and when we came into office, they commenced their travel there. They want to really revive the cricket in Grenada, and as such they would normally do these exchanges, which is more of a developmental nature. The exchange involves other countries, so in this instance it's the UK. They're going to play, and hopefully the boys will do well. They can gain some much needed experience and come back here, practice what they have learned, and also pass on that education to the younger generation of cricketers.
Great. Well, any closing remarks you wish to make before you rush off again?
Definitely. I would like for the upcoming carnival season for the young people to be on their P's and Q's. Whatever they do, practice it in moderation. Remember that you have a life after carnival. Remember that you have people who may look up to you or you may look up to, and you don't want to disappoint people. So remember that everything you do, always leave room for the right decision and make that right decision ultimately to protect your life and the future of your life and family.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed, Minister Ron Redhead, Minister responsible for sport and culture. Thank you very much. Thanks for stopping by.
Youth, sport and culture.
Youth, sport and culture, indeed.
Right.
And thanks for stopping by Heartbeat today. And, well, continue running.
Definitely.
Thank
you, Terry.
All the best. Thanks. Here now is the interview held with the Honorable David Andrew, Minister responsible for education. Good afternoon, Minister David Andrew. It's good of you to pop by the Heartbeat so we can chit-chat about what has been happening in education. I know, of course, your schools are on vacation, but in the background, of course, so much has been happening. But I hear from time to time comments with respect to the school voucher program, the assistance to needy students. Speak to us about that and other activities taking place in your Ministry of Education.
Right, well, thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to all of our listeners and followers wherever you are. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you and to bring brief updates on some of the things happening in education.
And it's a double pleasure for us to catch you today because you are so busy. But anyhow, let me not take up your time.
Yes, that's how life goes sometimes. But even before I talk about the Uniform Assistance Program, allow me to say the last 2 weeks we spent with having the Teachers Summer Institute, where we have specialized training for particular groups of teachers in particular areas.
Right.
So that's been happening over the last couple of weeks.
Right.
And with very, very good responses. Even the Grenada Union of Teachers had their own version of that with great reviews and good success too.
Wonderful.
So we are happy to be able to empower our teachers in various areas, whether it's to increase their skill and their knowledge in particular areas or to bridge gaps. But we are just happy to have had that conclude within the last 2 weeks. More specifically though, to the Uniform Assistance Program,
Right.
we are happy to report...
Some people call it the voucher program.
Yes, because formerly it was done through the issuing of a voucher.
Right.
We are moving towards less use of printing.
Right.
The last time we did it, the printing cost ran up into thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Just to print simple
Just to
vouchers that you got rid
That
of
cost you can
shortly
contribute
after.
to needy
Right.
students.
So what we've done, we are repeating what was done experimentally in a previous year, where the funds are going to be transferred digitally using a QR code.
What is the QR code for?
Well, it's one of the technologies available on most of these smartphones, smart devices,
Right.
that allows you to scan information, similar to how the barcode that you have on products can be scanned at a cashier
Right.
in a supermarket. It scans and the data is uploaded. So the
And,
information...
who receives these QR codes?
Right. So that is going to be for the parents, the person who applies. Their phone numbers have been registered.
Right.
And so that will be uploaded to them and it will be scanned. There's a machine that the vendors who are going to support the Uniform Assistance Program would have to be outfitted with.
Okay.
And they would have the scanning take place. The items available will be selected and all of that. So it's a system. I probably don't want to give all of the details right now. I can't, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's the system that's going to be used. It's a lot more cost effective. It's digitally directed, and it avoids the excessive printing of material, which is something that is a policy position of this current administration. So I'm happy we're going in that direction.
So the parents of those needy students, they are familiar with this process and they're comfortable with it?
I know it was done once before under the previous administration.
Right.
But whether or not they're familiar, once they get they've applied, they are going to be briefed. The vendors are going to be trained. So
Right.
it's not going to be a problem at all.
Okay.
It's not going to be a problem. But I'm happy to report that over the last couple of months, we have sent through the schools circulars informing principals to inform their parents and help identify and have the parents come through them, do the applications.
Right.
And we have been reviewing and verifying the information to make sure it's accurate.
Right.
Because sometimes you have one parent or the same child's name coming up twice, probably from a mother here and probably a father there if there's a separation. And so some of these verifications take place to make sure it's not the same birth date and the same location and the same school, so verification takes place.
Yeah.
And that's been happening. So we have quite a few thousands of persons already registered for support there. And we're in the final stages of preparing the QR codes and training with the vendors. So very shortly, we will have those actually paid out. But as I said, digitally, through the phones, using the QR codes. And we are just happy to be able to support our nation's children, those who might be needing in terms of uniform assistance.
What kind of a time schedule can you indicate to parents as to when they're likely to receive this QR code for their children's assistance?
But I don't want to commit precisely, but I know it's well advanced, and I anticipate that maybe within the next week or two, you'll hear a final release that says we have done it or we are doing it, and look out for this and look out for that, so it's completed by then. Yes?
Great.
So that's the uniform assistance program, and we are happy to have been so advanced in it. One of the other things I want to report is that recently, like in the week gone, we have completed the CPEA transfer process. It's been a pretty challenging process because quite a lot of persons applied for transfers beyond the space and the capacity that the schools had to accommodate them. Even though some of them had very legitimate reasons, very strong reasons that, you know, from a human point of view, you might be willing to consider the reality and the limitations in space in some of the schools that they've chosen really doesn't or didn't allow us or didn't allow the schools to be able to take them, unfortunately so. And so, but all of the students who have been selected or who have been allowed those places, as was allowed by the school, recognizing that they had the space, they have been called, I anticipate by now, by the schools.
So who informs the children?
The schools,
or your ministry?
The schools will call the persons who have been awarded the places. Because they're the ones making the recommendations in the first place. And we ratify to make sure it doesn't contravene our policies with the unions, or it doesn't go above the numbers, or you know, it doesn't unfairly disadvantage somebody who otherwise should have been there. That kind of verification we do. And then the school is sent that list, and the school makes the contact saying, yes, come to register your child because you've been approved. The other persons who were not successful, the ministry sends or sent a generic letter expressing regrets that the request application could not have been approved. Yes, so that process has been completed, as tiring as it has been. And let me just point out that in that process, the committee that does the oversight for the ministry is one that is comprised of former educators, respected persons in the communities. It does include the chief education officer, probably a curriculum officer, but other persons in the community. So that it's a broad-based, community-based team, and it's not just education making those decisions, but persons who understand and appreciate education that rule finally over the final.
Help us to
approval.
understand what happens to kids who have not been accepted by schools and your ministry would then communicate. What happens to them?
Well, remember, all students have already been placed. So what we are talking about here
is your choices.
Are persons who you have been placed, but for some reason or other, a parent applies for a transfer. So they've been placed in a school, but probably they feel, well, I work somewhere closer elsewhere,
so
and I wish to transfer my child. So that's the things we're talking about. So in a case where that can't happen for reasons of space or whatever other reason, the person, the child and the parent still have the opportunity to go back. Not the opportunity, they still have the placement that they were originally given.
They just have to maintain that. Place.
So that's what happens in that case. But we are happy to report that that process too has completed, and we are aware, sadly, that we can't facilitate everybody because
Space.
the space.
Yeah.
There are just some genuine limitations
Yeah.
that we can't override at this point. But we're happy to report that that's finished. I want to quickly report to a couple of things happening in terms of we have been putting a lot of emphasis on university education.
Right.
And we had the Dr. Glean and the team from the United States, and we've been talking a lot about capitalizing on the UE economic cost and the collaborations with the St. George's University and the 90% support that students get when they go to SGU, as well as the 80% economic cost that the government affords in collaboration with the University of the West Indies. And I want to report that because of that increased emphasis on the need for higher education, we are seeing in the scholarship department, for the first time in the history of the scholarships, the strongest uptake for applications for UWI economic cost scholarships.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and we are happy about that. And the more of our Grenadians that can benefit from that, the happier we will be.
What kind of dollars and cents are we talking about with respect to the economic cost to support students at UE?
Well, the truth is, there is a standard amount of millions. Off the top of my head, I think it's probably about 3 million or so that the government pays to. I'm subject to correction,
Yeah,
so
that's
I
okay.
don't want to be quoted.
No, that's
I don't
okay.
have figures in front of me.
Yeah, that's all right.
But there is a certain figure that the agreement with the University of the West Indies and the governments, member state governments, we pay to the university
Right. To
periodically,
support,
every
yeah.
year, every month, to support the operation of the university.
Right.
On the grounds that this member states, students from the member states will receive that 80% reduction in economic costs.
Right.
So we just want all of our Grenadian students to go and benefit from that. If it comes at additional cost, we are still happy because we are still very interested in seeing one student in every household, one university graduate from every household in
As
Grenada.
a policy position of
Yes.
government.
And we are aware that it's not something that's going to be done in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or even 4 or
No,
5.
it's a long-term
It's a long term. If you
plan.
look at Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados that have had similar type programs, Trinidad Gate and Barbados has had free education for quite a while. It takes a number of years to be able to get to significant percentages of that happening,
Yep.
but we are committed to it. It's a policy position that we are taking because we understand the importance
Right.
that education carries. And we believe that when that happens, there'll be more responsible lifestyles, there'll be reduction in social cost, there'll be better engagement of people, healthier practices, and so the benefits will spiral
Yeah.
outwards. So we are happy to report the increase in uptake as far as the economic
That's great.
cost scholarships with UE is concerned.
What is happening over at TAMCC?
Right. At TAMCC, I am happy to report that, I mean, you must have heard within the last couple of weeks, come September, there is going to be no, in fact, students have already registered. There's going to be no tuition cost attached to TAMCC.
That's major.
For students in this first phase. Let me make it clear. In this first phase, for students transitioning from secondary school into TAMCC, there'll be no cost. The $810 tuition cost
This is,
will be paid by the government.
This is a major
Yes, it
ease
is.
on the pockets of parents.
Absolutely, and we are aware that would afford them the opportunity to probably serve other children in their family, to be able to do something else. It's a huge benefit
Absolutely.
that the government is prepared to invest in our people. So that's coming September, but not only for TAMCC, because it's also working out for NULO, because we are fine-tuning, because NULO's programs are a little different and the time spans are different, but we are also doing that for persons going to NULO
Wow.
to ensure that we encourage all of our young people to continue schooling and ensuring that they get a deeper level of skilling, that they acquire more skill set, and would be so able to better contribute to nation building, to fill the skills gap
Yeah.
that our country faces,
Serious.
and have less of our people come from schools and end up on the block or end up unemployed and saying they can't find work, when in truth and in fact they lack the skills. So that is an opportunity for all students
Yeah.
to continue on and gather a relevant skill to become more employable and more marketable in the
So
world
you're
of work.
saying is that the school fees associated with that institution, NULO, will now also be free?
Well, let me not make it. Let me say the
Or
the
you're
tuition
working towards that?
No, the tuition fees.
Okay.
There may be other charges, so I want to
Alright,
make it
so
clear.
just the tuition fee.
Yes, and in TAMCC's case as well.
Tuition
because,
fees only.
yes, there may be small charges for uniforms
Yeah.
or for identification pins or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We are not absorbing those.
Right.
Because we want people to invest some time and effort and
Yeah.
energy into
Of
their
course.
educational acquisition as well.
Of course.
But we want to make sure we contribute significantly.
Yeah, which is the major cost, which is the tuition fees. Government will now pay these tuition fees starting from September.
Yes, and the agreement's already in place, and we've discussed significantly with TAMCC and NULO. We're engaging
And,
that as
and
well.
that extend onto other schools where Grenadians need to pay a fee, tuition fee,
You mean other schools?
GDSS,
Well,
college.
remember last year we already had removed the fees, the games fee, the lab fee, the fees, the routine fees
Right.
that people had to pay. And some people seem to be a little confused, but that was already done last year. We removed those fees from primary school and secondary school,
All right.
as well as introduced a subvention for pre-primary schools, which was never there before. So that already happened in the very, very first year of our governance.
But people seem to have forgotten that.
Well, it's a good time to remind them
It's a good
that
time
that
indeed.
happened. So we are just moving closer to fulfilling our commitment, because we did it at the primary and pre-primary level. We took away the fees and subsidized the schools to the extent that we took away the fees that they were charging our nation's children. But let me say still that the fees that there are still things cost
Right.
associated with registration, for instance. When a child goes into school for the first time, some people have complained, my child is going into secondary school this year, and he has to pay $150. That's understandable, because he may have to get a school uniform, or he may have to get a PE uniform, he has to get a tie, he has to get an ID badge. All of those things come with costs.
Right.
And so they receive deliverables for them. So it's not unusual. But they wouldn't have to pay that every year.
Right. That's a one-off.
That's a one-off.
Yeah.
But in terms of the other elements that you would have had to pay repeatedly,
Like
That's no-
tuition.
that's no
no
longer
longer
there.
there.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Realize your throat is giving you a little bit of a trouble. So we
Right.
ask you to,
Right.
advance on what
So-
you wish to share.
there are two other things I really want to mention. I'm thrilled to report that all is in place to start the teaching of Grenadian history
That's me.
in our lower secondary school. So we are happy that we've been able to partner with Dr. Nicole Dow, a local Grenadian author,
Yeah.
historian. She's been able to put the publication together. It was published by Collins, and we've even gone on to train local teachers. So within the last 2 weeks, we've trained them in how to use the curriculum, the history curriculum that was reviewed.
Right.
The book is excellent. It has local content, it has interactive material, insightful questions that piques their intuition and that kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
And I'm very excited that we are well on course to introduce it in September
Because
in lower secondary school. That leads up to the commencement of the West Indian history syllabus.
Yeah.
Very, very excited about that.
When I heard the Prime Minister made that statement, maybe about 2 months ago, somehow I felt, well, this is something next year. So I am really pleased, happy to hear that this is going to be introduced this September.
Yeah, well, this government is about action.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely.
We know we don't have 20 years. We want to do it now. We want to get it done, and we don't want to take 20 years to get it done.
Nope.
We may have more than 20 years in office.
No, of course. But
But
you don't want to take 20 years to
Right,
get things done.
We don't want to take 20 years to do that. So I'm happy we're getting that done. In addition to that, we are also going to have introduced in a select number of primary schools the reintroduction of Spanish as a second language.
Yeah, very important.
At the primary level, where it's easier to acquire language, the brain is better wired to pick up language.
Oh, yeah.
So we are happy to be doing that. And we are going to observe and watch and see the issue of sustainability and the best modality. We'd work on that. But we are happy about all these great initiatives happening in education.
Well, this is really, really interesting indeed. Very, very exciting times. I know you have a tight schedule and your throat is obviously not feeling too well. So I would ask you, if you wish to just give me your closing remarks.
Well, I'm just happy to have been selected to work along with the Ministry of Education. I say thanks to all of the officers who continue to support the agenda, knowing full well that this is going to serve our nation's children, is going to serve our nation's parents, and it's going to serve our country well. So thanks to all parents, thanks to teachers, thanks to the ministry staff for their contribution, and even thanks to you for allowing me the opportunity to be able to share these things, and Grenada will only be better for all of this. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much indeed, Minister. And I know that, we're all coming out from a hectic 2-day retreat session. And I want to thank you for taking the time off at this late, moment to make, these valuable contributions which you have shared. So thank you again very much and good luck.
Thank you,
with I know the kids, they're on vacation now, but very soon they'll be back out to school before you know it.
Yeah. Well, let me just take the opportunity while I'm at it to encourage parents to do all in their power to keep their children safe. It's a period where, children are full of energy, and with the festive season, sometimes things can go a little bit out of whack. We can lose sight of important things. Mm-hmm. So I'm pleading with parents, put structure together. Our children need structure.
Yep.
You need to have time, you need to have boundaries, have parameters, have things set up. Check in with them. Don't just leave them to go to every party, every fete, because there's a lot happening. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure our students come back to us in September, God's willing, safe, secure, and in one piece.
Absolutely. Thank you very much again, Minister. David Andrew, Minister for Education. Thank you. Here now is the rebroadcast of the Prime Minister's press conference held earlier on this week on the subject matter of crime and violence. For those of you who are listening on radio, WeFM, Vibes FM, Spice Capital Radio, and indeed Talk Grenada, which is now on 90.1, please take note that when our program ends at 1 o'clock, the press briefing, press conference will continue on the NDC Facebook page. So for those of you who wish to hear the rest of the press conference, please join us on the NDC Facebook page. We will now say goodbye to those on radio as the program will end at 1 p.m. Thank you for being part of the Heartbeat today, and join us again next Sunday.
Let me start by saying pleasant afternoon to all our citizens of Grenada, and a special afternoon to all of the families, friends, communities that have been affected in Grenada, including Carriacou and Petit Martinique in recent weeks by the shocking acts of violence that we've seen and the sad and untimely passing of some of our citizens, whether it be by suicide or sudden death. It is certainly with a significant degree of sadness that I'm addressing the nation this afternoon. My presentation will really be in 3 parts. One, I will make a general statement to the nation. The second, I will share some statistics from the police as it relates to homicides, suicides in particular, and general crime in particular. As part of my statement, I will talk with specific focus on the youth as it relates to some of the activities and interventions that are ongoing in relation to addressing behavior patterns, youth violence, and ensuring that we take a collective approach to addressing violence in particular amongst our young persons. And then finally, I would obviously give members of the media the opportunity to ask me any questions that they may have. So thank you very much. In recent weeks, our society has been shaken by acts of violence and loss that have left several of our families and communities in mourning, searching for answers. The grief that we currently carry cannot be denied. It weighs heavily on our hearts and threatens to dampen our view of the bright and prosperous future that lies within our reach. I take this opportunity to remind every Grenadian that the success of the future we seek to build depends on our collective efforts. The violent acts of recent weeks are a sad reminder that the actions of a few can derail our shared progress, plunging families into deep despair. I implore all citizens to please think before you act. Think about your future. Think about your family, your neighbor. Think about the many individuals that may be affected by your actions. Every act of violence affects our entire community, both emotionally and economically. It may not be the most obvious correlation, but acts of violence affect the lives and livelihoods of Grenadians across the island. We continue to be blessed with a generally safe community. But we must do all that we can to protect our peace and protect the safe and serene beauty of our homeland. During these trying times, it is imperative that we band together as one, united and steadfast in our determination to overcome these challenges as one people and one family. The Bible reminds us in Galatians chapter 6 verse 2 that we must carry each other's burdens. Many of our people, including our youth, are struggling to cope with an ever-changing and increasingly fast-paced world, where societal expectations fuel heightened levels of anxiety and depression. Some of our young people, and adults as well, are struggling to find the right avenues to express their emotions and lack essential conflict resolution skills. The negative effects of a 2-year pandemic, paired with many of the global economic challenges, including the cost of living increases, also continue to affect many individuals. So now, more than ever, we must be each other's keepers. We are blessed to live in small communities where, with some effort, we can truly make a difference. I encourage each person to reach out to their loved ones, friends, and neighbors a little more often. Check on their well-being and offer a listening ear to those who may be silently suffering. I implore churches and community leaders to continue to play an active role in driving community engagements, providing opportunities for connection, understanding, and healing through after-school programs and activities. As a government, and in partnership with local NGOs, we have several initiatives in place to assist citizens who may need additional support. The Psychosocial Support Unit in the Ministry of Social and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs is one such initiative and serves to strengthen good mental health and resilience among citizens. We intend to strengthen community policing and engagement, but we are interested in getting to the root issues that have been manifested in violence within our communities. I call on every citizen to actively make an effort to be kinder in our interactions with one another. I paraphrase Mahatma Gandhi when I say that the simplest acts of kindness can be more powerful than 1,000 heads bowing in prayer. Let us nurture a spirit of compassion in our communities. Together, little by little, we can foster a culture of understanding, respect, and peace, where every life is cherished. It is vitally important that we take care of our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, as all aspects are interconnected. Sadly, in our society, we often neglect the mental and emotional, viewing these areas of human development as weak. It is time that we break this false narrative that is causing too many of our people to suffer in silence. It is also time that we embrace better physical care of our bodies. Improving our health system is a major step. However, effective physical care will require a mind shift from many of our people towards regular health screenings, healthy eating patterns, regular exercise, and maintaining a healthy weight. Non-communicable diseases in the form of heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, hypertension, and cancers are the leading cause of premature deaths in the Caribbean and in Grenada, and pose a serious threat to the health and development of many Grenadians. Finally, spiritual health is as important as the other areas of well-being, as belief systems provide a sense of connectedness, inner peace, and a broader perspective on life. Moving forward, as we move forward in this new season, let us not forget the resilience that resides within each and every Grenadian. We are a people of strength, forged by the challenges we have faced throughout our history. I have no doubt that with determination, we can overcome these trials and emerge stronger than ever before. May the wounds of our nation and the wounds particularly of the families of the victims who've been affected by these acts of violence be healed, and may the memory of those we have lost guide us in our pursuit for a better future. May God continue to bless all of us. Thank you. I want to share with the nation two things. One, some statistics provided by the Royal Grenada Police Force as it relates to crime. And then two, some of the interventions that are currently taking place, both from a government perspective, from a government and NGO, as well as from a community perspective. So I will start with some of the statistics, and I'm referring to the statistics because it's important for us to have perspective, to also to remain calm, and to not give in to anxieties, to our fears, to not become depressed, because we certainly accept that one crime is a crime too many. One homicide is a homicide too many. One suicide is a suicide too many. But we also have to have some perspective and actual facts so that we do not escalate or make the situation worse. And it is important at the end of the day for us to do all that we can to minimize and prevent the homicides, the suicides, and any other acts of violence. Now, I will start with the suicides for the year 2023. Certainly, in the last 2 weeks, we've had a lot of attention arising from the suicide or alleged suicide of two young women, one of whom is a prominent and well-known attorney at law from a prominent family. But the statistics sadly also reflects that for the year we've had, in addition to the alleged suicides by the two young women, 4 suicides committed by men whose ages range from 50, 57, 49, and 67. And therefore it demonstrates that mental illness is no respecter of sex and no respecter of age. And statistically, it means that we've had persons who are in their mid-50s and 60s committing suicide at double the rate of young persons. And so when we say that many of our citizens are suffering in silence, it's not just young people. It is adults, and in many cases, senior citizens as well. And so it's important for us that when we look at the interventions that we need in our community, that we do not over-focus or only focus on young people, but obviously that we pay attention and focus on our adults and our senior citizens as well. compared for the same period between 2022 and 2023. Last year, for the same period, we would have had 3 homicides. This year, we are indeed at an alarming number of 14 homicides. And there is no doubt, therefore, as I've said, one homicide is one homicide too many. And that many of these homicides occur in situations where if the persons engaged in conflict resolution, if they had the skill set needed to talk through their disputes or their differences, that the acts of violence would not have happened, nor would the loss of life. And so it's absolutely critical that when we look at these situations, that we ensure that we take a preventative approach to the loss of life rather than a reactionary approach. And certainly we accept the Royal Grenada Police Force, which has the responsibility for law and order in our society, will have to do more to ensure that we minimize the risk of further homicides for the year. One other area, and I've spoken about that as Minister of National Security on several occasions already, is the increased interdiction of illegal firearms. Last year, as of this time, 16 illegal firearms were interdicted. As of this year, we are at 31. So to that extent, we certainly wish to commend the Royal Grenada Police Force in ensuring that the interdiction rate has stepped up and that we've been successful in doing so. But it also points to a dangerous trend in our view, which is the proliferation of firearms within our communities. I've indicated that the government's policy on this is that we will take a zero tolerance to firearms. But we also have to appreciate that the firearms are not made in Grenada. They are brought into Grenada. And this is not just a Grenada problem, but a regional problem. And we have, at a regional level, been advocating and addressing this issue with our partners in the United States in particular, because the majority of the firearms come from the United States. We recognize, therefore, that beefing up our screening and our security at our ports of entry, particularly at the seaport, is going to be critical. And so the Grenada Ports Authority is taking steps to be able to get the necessary screening that can allow for the screening of barrels and so on, so that we can detect attempts at introducing illegal firearms into our communities. As you're aware, we're also stepping up. And in recent times, we were blessed to have received a donation from the United States of America that would allow us to better patrol our ports and our coastline to continue the interdiction of illegal firearms. The other main areas of criminal offense, drug offenses, in 2022, as at this time, the Royal Grenada Police Force recorded 128 offenses. In 2023, it has recorded for the same period 150 offenses. Housebreaking and stealing, 2022 at this time, the number of cases recorded was 93. This is down significantly for the same period. The number of cases recorded is 54. Stealing, the number of cases recorded 897 for the same period. For the period 2023, there's an increase of 1,060. Sexual crimes, for the period 2022, the figure recorded for the same period was 202. There's a significant decrease for the period 2023. It is down to 138. And the miscellaneous threatening language, last year 1,147, and this year 1,246. Regrettably as well, we've had 3 road fatalities for the year. Last year, at the same period, 5. So the number is down 5. So, action. One. So that's of so from the perspective of the Ministry of Social and Community Development and the various initiatives that the government is engaged with NGOs to address the necessary intervention amongst our young people. And I want to stress that some of these initiatives are ongoing. Some of these initiatives will be coming on stream but it is just the tip of the iceberg. We need a whole of society approach to address the issue of violence, to address the issue of behavior, to ensure that our people, not just our young people, but all our citizens, feel a sense of hope, a sense of belonging, and are confident that there is someone that they can reach out to in the event they are feeling anxious, in the event they're depressed, and that they're aware that the entire society cares about their well-being and their life. So I will just give some feedback as to what some of those initiatives are. There are a number of them. There is the Youth Resilience, Inclusion and Empowerment Program, or YRE. This is a collaboration with the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. This aims to empower youth by promoting inclusion through mentorship and facilitating professional development opportunities. There's the Carry Secure 2.0 project, which is implemented by the United Nations Development Program, or the UNDP, and it facilitates the analysis of data to improve the country's capacity to identify the root cause of youth crime and design policies, strategies, programs, and interventions to mitigate these tendencies. And this program is important because oftentimes adults and senior citizens make comments about youth or youth behavior with no actual facts and no actual data. And so we actually need the data to look at what are the crimes young people are committing. Why are they committing those crimes? What is the age range that they commit those crimes are? What are the factors that would have led them to commit the crimes? And what interventions have happened after, so that we can design necessary policies to make sure that less of our young persons are at risk for being branded as criminals or engaging in criminal activity. There is the OASIS program, which is an opportunity to advance and support youth for success. That has been implemented in conjunction with the Organization for Eastern Caribbean States and will primarily focus on increasing the diversion of youth, from young persons away from courts and custodial sentences, because we recognize that there is a high tendency, if young persons are given custodial sentences and go to prison, there is a high probability of repetition. And so we need to ensure that we do not rush to criminalize our young people or criminalize their behavior and actually turn them into career criminals. The Ministry of Social Development, a number of approaches are ongoing. Currently, young persons who have been identified as being at risk to offend are referred to the probation unit in conjunction with the police authorities. And they are taken into what we describe as the alternative program. That program exposes young persons to life skills, conflict resolution, anger management, leadership skills, and the ability to discuss the issues that confront them. They are given the opportunity to speak, to talk, to engage with persons. It is not a lecture series, but an active participatory approach that allows the young persons to recognize that they have the ability to change their lives. There is training to support the reconciliation and restorative justice practices through mediation for youth. And I'm a big fan of mediation because it allows young persons, as well as adults, to own the solutions to the conflicts that exist between themselves and other persons. So teaching young people, youth and young persons the skills necessary for mediating the conflicts is something that we are keen to support. Therefore, the training of mentors and community members in this process is being rolled out, and we expect that this will help members of the community, as well as young persons, to be able to improve their behaviors, to strengthen civil society engagements, and to provide effective leadership and restore relationships, because this is key amongst our communities, amongst our villages. If there are disputes between families or between individuals, we have to be able to ensure that when we resolve those disputes, that the relationship is improved and restored, so that going forward, these disputes do not reoccur or new disputes do not happen. The OASIS program, I addressed this one already, parenting. And the Minister for Social and Community Development, the Honorable Senator Thomas, is very keen on supporting this. Parenting is crucial, and it is one of the main approaches being used to help young persons, particularly young persons with children, to ensure that they have the necessary parenting skills to help them to become proper parents. Because proper parenting strategies certainly can help to reduce delinquency and deviance in society, and we continue to implement the parenting sessions. Last week, for example, parenting training was conducted in the island of Carriacou. Next Monday, the probation unit will continue with its summer program. The program is specifically targeting young people in conflict with the law, starting on Monday, 24th July. The location is upstairs, the fish market located on Melville Street, and the program will be conducted 3 times weekly. In the first instance for 1 month as a pilot, and then we intend to continue rolling it out throughout the length and breadth of Grenada. At the prison, there is the No Turning Back initiative, which continues in conjunction with the probation unit to visit the prison to work with young offenders, giving them tips on how to ensure that they do not re-enter the prison system. At the Backlit Rehabilitation and Juvenile Center, a program has recently been instituted called Reach and Teach program. The program aims to ensure that young people leaving the center will be walking into meaningful engagements and jobs or apprenticeship or entrepreneurship to ensure that they have the necessary means to survive. And finally, in conjunction with Dr. Chaitan, the ministry is engaging currently every Thursday for 12 consecutive Thursdays, a program in Gov targeting young people in Gov and St. Mark on behavior modification through the probation unit. So I've simply given examples of these programs from a government and NGO perspective, but I'm also aware that there are several Grenadians, several church leaders, even political parties, including the National Democratic Congress and the New National Party, that have taken initiatives to ensure that we can target young persons, to ensure that we can target adults who may be depressed, who may be suffering from anxiety, or who may be having a difficult time, or who may have disputes or differences at a community or individual level. So, for example, in St. Patrick's, where some of the more unpleasant homicides took place, particularly amongst the young persons, the Royal Grenada Police Force, in conjunction with Pastor King and the church community there, as well as in conjunction with the MP for the area, the Honorable Dennis Cornwall, have had several interventions and meetings and engagements with the communities to ensure that the hostility, the anxiety, the hurt, the pain subsides, so that the community members recognize that we all must coexist in harmony. And it makes no sense to talk about reprisals or continuing the violence or the loss of life. I give this as one example. In Parliament this morning, the Honourable Member of Parliament for St. Andrews Northeast pointed to the New Nationals Party youth event, which according to her was also aimed at addressing youth behaviour. Ongoing at this point in time, starting from this Thursday, the National Democratic Congress Women's Arm, in conjunction with Dr. Chaitan, will also be engaging with several seminars to teach people coping skills, to ensure that people understand what is depression. How can we treat it? How can we spot it? How do we destigmatize it? Because oftentimes, sadly, we have a culture in our society where persons who suffer from mental illness have been stigmatized, oftentimes dehumanized. And when that happens, we simply worsen the illness. And oftentimes, there are tragic consequences, not just in terms of suicide, but oftentimes, sometimes violent acts involving members of the community or involving law enforcement. So I want to thank all of the citizens of Grenada who've expressed their concerns, who've prayed, who sought to be kinder, who sought to, in their own way, help to address the situation. This is something that impacts all of us, and we have to ensure that we take a collective approach, that we take a people and community first approach to ensuring it. I want to end again by expressing my own profound condolences to all families who've lost a loved one in recent times, whether it's through sudden death, whether it's through suicide, whether it's through homicide, or prolonged illness. We certainly ask the families to cherish your loved ones in the memories. We ask your friends, families, and the wide community to remember you in their prayers and thoughts. And I assure our Grenadian public that we will emerge from this stronger, more united, and more resilient. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions members of the media may have.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Mitchell. Members of the media, you've gotten a lot of information there as it pertains to crime and different programs that come on stream. Before I invite the first member from the media to pose a question to Prime Minister Mitchell, PM, I'd just like you to just give us a little elaborate a little further for us on one of the important programs that you mentioned, which is the mentorship program, as the whether or not if there is a timeline for that to come on stream, because we see that as a very important program based on what we've seen happening within society if we have good mentors among not only our youth, but bridging the gap.
I'm going to have to verify from the Ministry of Social and Community Development whether the program already is ongoing or whether there's a start date for it. And once I have that information, I will certainly share it.
So do we have any members of Do we have any member of the media ready to pose question to Prime Minister Mitchell? Prime Minister has shared a lot of information as it relates to crime and violent acts in the country. Over the past few weeks, we've been reading from a lot of Facebook investigators and everyone around as it relates to crime and what should and should not have been done. We have the Minister of National Security here, so I think it's only fitting that we, based on what he presented, that we ask him the pertinent questions to get the relevant answers. I see we have Linda Straker there. We have Miss Nancy Maguire. Any of you, or is it that the Prime Minister was very clear in what he has delivered? Okay, so we will go to Ms. Maguire. Ms. Maguire, go ahead and pose your question. Prime Minister, I believe she's asking, with some of the presentation you made, if there will be specific officers trained in various areas to address these concerns.
Officers as in from within the Ministry of Social and Community Development?
Yes, in terms of, I think she's speaking towards the probation unit and so.
Yes, certainly. I mean, in capacity building is part of all of the programs, and training is an essential part of that.
Oh, she wants to know if the police officers will be trained in that aspect as well.
Right. So, well, the most of the programs I highlighted were not policing initiatives. They were social and community initiatives geared towards crime prevention, and behavioral change, and ensuring that persons don't engage in violence or see violence as a normal act. The policing aspect is a little different. The focus of the police would be on community policing. That's one. And that's important because obviously we need to know what are the hotspots. We need to know what are the areas where there's likely to be an issue, and be able to ensure that the police are there in advance of that happening. The second aspect that I want to say, and the police have actually admitted that robust policing is necessary because to some extent, some of the areas where are trouble spots or where you are likely to have more crime is known. And so proactive law enforcement is one of the things that the police has to take part in. But I also agree with you that the same skill sets that I spoke of in terms of the mentoring, in terms of the training, that it would also help if police officers are exposed to that training as well, because it allows them as well to be able to diffuse community issues. It allows them to be able to engage in mediation with the community members whenever there are disputes and so on. So it's certainly something that the police itself would benefit from in terms of ensuring that they are given the training in those aspects as well.
Prime Minister, you also mentioned a bit about the Grand Bacolet Juvenile Center and the issue of being able to engage the youth in terms of, instead of decriminalizing, in terms of criminalizing them. What are some of the immediate plans to fully engage them?
Well, I will tell you this. I actually paid a visit to the Bacolet Center myself. And, you know, what struck me is the age at which the young men in particular are at the stage. We're talking young men as young as 11, 8 and 9. And when you speak with them, in many instances, they should not be at the center. Because you have instances where they may engage in what is normal boyhood behavioral challenges, disobeying a parental instruction, eating a loaf of bread when it's your sister's bread and it's not yours. And oftentimes our parents call on the authorities to then take their sons away. And it's parenting issues. So to a large extent, we need to ensure that we do not stigmatize young men simply because they may be robust in their response, or like any young man growing up, they may not obey commands given by their parents or by an elder sibling, and criminalize them. So we have to ensure that we minimize actually people going to the rehabilitation center. That's the first thing, because you then get stigmatized. But secondly, I think it is critical that while they are there, we do not treat it as a prison. And to be honest, the minister knows, I think the management knows, that that is one of the things that we must change. Because the past approach has been to treat it as if it's a prison, and to treat the young men and women as if they're in prison. Right? And the focus has to be on rehabilitation, and not treating them as criminals and treating them as prisoners. So basic amenities, their beds, well, they don't even have closets. They have lockers. And when you look at the state of the lockers, you couldn't even put canned goods in the lockers, and they're expected to put their clothing there, right? But when you get there, what you see is beautiful young men and women who want an opportunity to be a whole human being, who want an opportunity to paint, to draw. I mean, I looked at many of them. I saw their paintings, I saw their drawings and so on, right? I saw the farm work, the agriculture and so on that they're doing. So what we have to understand, and in many instances, they probably didn't expect that I would stop and engage with them, because they just thought I would pass, I'd be shown the building, but we stopped and we talked. The visit lasted much longer than anticipated, because oftentimes that's all a young person wants. They want the opportunity to be engaged, for someone to speak with them, to hear their version of things, to hear how they perceive or see the world. And we have to do a lot more of that, so that persons do not feel the first time you make a mistake, or the first time you say something you should not have said, or you speak in a manner you should not have spoken, or you behave in a manner you should not have behaved, that you end up in a situation where you're confined and treated as if you are beyond redemption. So that would be critical, and that's why it's important that they are given this skill set, so that when they go back in the communities, when they go back home, when they go back to the schools, that they understand what is happening. You know, I had a discussion with one young man. I said, why are you here? He's like, well, I left home with a knife. I said, why did you leave home with a knife? He said, because another guy, I think, was threatening to beat him up. So I said, where's the other guy now? He says he's out. But I said, who's in the juvenile center? It's you, right? I said, so we have to make better decisions. But if he didn't feel he had someone that he could speak to about what was confronting him, then obviously he would feel he needs to protect himself and there's no help. And so those are some of the issues we need to address. And that's why at a community and a society level, we need to ensure that the young men know that there are other options other than saying the only way I can defend myself is by walking with a knife. I don't know if Ms. Straker audio is better.
She has posted a question. She's asking you, Mr. Prime Minister, can you tell us how the guns were confiscated? Okay, I guess when you made your statement as to making comparison to what was done in one period to the other.
Well, that's not a question I could answer. At best, I think that question could be posed to the Commissioner of Police, and I presume his team would feed him the information as to how the guns were confiscated. I don't have any data on how they were confiscated. There are one or two incidents I know of, for example, at the port, where we had an interception of a large cache of firearms which were brought in via container. This was widely publicized and so on. There are other instances where a firearm was confiscated in Carriacou and so on. So certainly those that are reported in the public, but I certainly would not have granular details as to how the police would have interdicted or confiscated the firearms. Is that?
Yes. Ms. Maguire is asking you as well as to whether or not there will be changes to the composition of the RGPF. I'm not sure if it's in context to what you're saying, that in terms of the different plans and programs that you mentioned that is going to be ongoing, but she's asking if there will be changes to the composition of the RGPF. I don't know if it is to fit in with what it is that you've mentioned.
No, well, at this point, the answer would be no. There are no plans to change the composition of the RGF.
Okay. And violence, in particular, gun violence, is now described as a public health issue, and this is coming from Linda Straker. And she's asking if you can say what are the specific public health prevention measures that will be employed by the government to reduce the impact.
All right. Well, as you're aware, we recently had a CARICOM symposium on this issue, where, in a sense, for the first time, I think we were grappling with whether we should accept that gun violence is a public health issue from a Caribbean perspective. On the assumption that that thesis is accepted because of the impact it has on the public and on the community. I think from a strategic perspective, this is important. Guns are lethal and they made to kill. That's the only purpose for having a gun. So even if it's sport rifles, it's meant to kill the animal or whatever it is you're shooting at. And so from a culture perspective, first and foremost, and from a society perspective, as I've said, the government's policy is that we will have zero tolerance for firearms. And that would influence everything we do. Starting with licensed firearms, you need to demonstrate that you actually do have a real need for a licensed firearm, one. Two, as I indicated previously, the guns come out of the United States. And so we have, from an advocacy level, from a security cooperation level, both from a bilateral perspective and from a regional level, we have spent extensive time, resources, and dialogue with our partners in the United States, both from the executive level as well as from congressmen and women who've been in the Caribbean and who've been visiting Grenada, explaining to them that the U.S. government needs to do more to ensure that guns do not leave their borders destined for Caribbean nations. And we will continue to advocate, we will continue to work with them to ensure that that happens. From a border perspective, in the context of Grenada, as I've said, the Port Authority in particular, or Airport Authority, we have to ensure that we give them the necessary equipment that will allow for the screening of all cargo. Now, this is expensive and it will take some time, but we have to start. And I've said the Port Authority is on its way to procuring screening equipment that will allow it to screen barrels and so on in particular. Because the person who are smuggling guns are very creative. At the symposium in Trinidad, you would see examples of guns in conflicts, guns in flowers, guns in all kinds of means. So we have to ensure that our borders are protected, and at the ports of entry that we have the necessary screening equipment that would allow the screening of all cargo that's coming in. The second aspect, as I said, is beefing up our capacity via the Coast Guard to patrol our borders. Because as you're aware, there's P.T. Martinique, there's Carriacou, there's the Grenadines, there's Trinidad to our south. And to the south of Trinidad is Venezuela, right? And South America. And so we have to ensure that we can resource as best we can within our limited means and in reliance on our partners. That we have the necessary equipment that will allow for a more robust patrolling of our shores to make sure that we can intercept and interdict any attempts to bring firearms in. And oftentimes the firearms goes with the narcotic trade, particularly the cocaine trade from South America. And obviously at a domestic level, the police, without me being at liberty to say more, engage in very deliberate strategic actions to interdict, to gather intelligence, and to work on ensuring that they can bring in as many firearms as possible. I will admit that at a policy level, we've had some discussions as to whether a gun amnesty would make sense. We have not resolved that issue. It is something we are still considering in conjunction with the Royal Grenada Police Force. But again, you need to actually have data that these things will work. There's no point in having it if it will not work. I will indicate that at a policy level, though, the intention would be to amend the Firearms Act to have far stiffer penalties for persons found in possession or the trafficking of illegal firearms. So that's one policy issue that we intend to pursue. So I hope I've done some justice to the question that has been asked.
And we do have a final two question for you. I think it's the second part to Ms. Maguire's question, where she was speaking to the changes to the composition of the RGPF. She's now asking for you to give more details, because she was speaking in terms of numbers. Will there be added numbers to the RGPF?
Oh, okay. Well, no, certainly one of the challenges the RGPF has been faced with is mission creep, as well as police officers engaging in a lot of activities that have been heaped upon them, which are not necessarily security related. And so from that perspective, we are looking at ensuring that we can beef up the numbers that the police have. So in areas where the police have been, I will use this word, outsourced to provide security, where the entity that is using them to provide the security can do so itself, our approach would be, in fact, to have the police officers go back to policing. So I'll give an example. At the port, as many as 30 plus police officers provide security to the port. The Port Authorities have already indicated to the chair, the government's perspective is that the Port Authority has to provide its own security. There may be need for top-level police supervision, but we feel the Port Authority, the Airport Authority, those areas that we need the police officers back in policing given the shortages of numbers. We certainly will also be looking to recruit more police officers because we recognize that there's a shortage, particularly boots on the ground. We need to ensure that there's more vibrant and robust and obvious patrolling. But we also have to rely on and use technology. And so from a policy perspective, the government will be looking to address this. So for example, the use of CCTV cameras at public hotspots. We will need the necessary legislation to do so. We need to have the necessary technology, but those are some of the issues that we'll be pursuing so that we can have coverage, for example, of our public spaces, the public markets, main bus routes, bus shelters, places where people congregate, so that we can at least have eyes on the place that would allow the police to react better. So yes, we certainly intend to increase the numbers. Our strategy as well is to ensure that the police officers who are in a sense outsourced and not doing co-policing can be brought back. Strategically as well, I think I've indicated that our policy will be one in which we pursue matters that could be done by civilians. For example, some of the immigration matters, the passport office. Really, this is stuff that could be done by civilians. And so we need the police officers to be back in policing to help with the numbers. Licensing and inspection of vehicles. These are matters that could be done by civilians. We certainly need the police officers there to be policing. So that's part of the overall strategic approach that we'll be taking to ensure that the police itself can beef its numbers up to do actual policing.
Thank you very much, PM. We now have the final question, and it's coming from Linda Straker, and she's saying that earlier in the year, you mentioned there will be changes to the Firearm Act. Can you tell us what progress has been made in that area? That's part one. Then she's asking, what is the evidence that the guns are coming from the USA? And is there any evidence that guns purchased in the USA was found in Grenada? And that's the final questions. They're all coming from Linda Straker.
I don't know. I could tell you what the evidence is the guns were made in the USA, other than telling you the guns are coming from the USA. And I think I pointed out to one incident where a significant cache of firearms were intercepted at the port. The container came out of the United States of America. And the fact that the guns are coming out from the United States is not disputed by our friends and partners in the United States. I think they accept that they need to help us to do more, which is why they've been partnering with us to address this issue. As I've indicated, we are looking at increasing making amendments to the Firearms Act with a view of addressing the penalties that are associated with illicit firearms. And so we expect that this will be on our legislative agenda for the last half of 2023.
Thank you very much, PM. I just ask you to make some closing remarks. I know that we're already within the season. I don't know if you would get the opportunity to address again, but as you speak into the issue of acts of violence, and so if you just speak a few words towards that.
Yes, well, I think the Royal Grenada Police Force has had several consultations with promoters, event holders, with the Spice Mask Corporation, so that we can ensure that we provide a safe environment for the carnival. So certainly the Royal Grenada Police Force has its plan to address this. We also clearly recognize that when you have mass gatherings of persons, when you have a lot of entertainment, when you have a lot of consumption of alcohol, it is crucial to ensure that people can behave in a manner that minimizes the risk for unwanted behavior or for aggressive behavior. So there are things that I think the police is working on in conjunction with the promoters, ensuring there's a prompt start, prompt end to events, ensuring that there's adequate, not just police, but private security at the events, ensuring that people can get home safely. Because oftentimes that's part of the risk you face if people are lingering, and don't have transportation and so on. So as is customary, the Royal Grenada Police Force obviously would have, the usual stop and search, ensuring that they can, if people have knives and other things that they should not have if they're going to events and so on, that all of that happens. But I think, again, Carnival doesn't belong to the police. It belongs to us. And so it's important for us, for our people, our young persons, all of us who are taking part in the Carnival activities to understand that if you go and you fight, if you leave home with a knife, if you get too drunk because you lose control of yourself, that you are in fact marring and giving a bad rap to the very thing that you say you like, the Carnival, the season. So it goes back to us again recognizing that we have to have collective responsibility for Carnival, collective responsibility for friends or neighbors. If you notice that someone is drinking too much, stop them so that they can keep hold of themselves, so that they don't lose control of themselves. If you notice someone is drinking, you should ensure that they don't drive, right? You should pull, if you all want to go out, hire a bus, go out, with 10, 12 of you, rather than each of you trying to drive and wanting to drink at the same time. So there are very basic common sense things that we can do to ensure that we have a safe and enjoyable carnival, and to make sure our property as well is safe. Ensuring that you lock your cars, parking in a place where there is light, or as I said, carpooling, ensuring before you leave home that you secure your home, that your homes are closed up and so on. So all of these things are things which over several years I've seen the police brief us on. It's important that we take it seriously, so that we can protect our property, protect our loved ones, and that we can all have a safe and enjoyable carnival, and that Grenada remains the safest island in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Well, this is where we pull the curtains down, and thank you for joining the Heartbeat podcast this beautiful Sunday afternoon, and catch up with you again next Sunday, where we'll do it all over again. Have a great Sunday afternoon. Goodbye.